Hey, changemakers. Thank you for tuning into the Hacking the Patriarchy podcast. I'm your fervent feminist host, Raven O'Neill, and I get the honors of sitting down weekly with diverse experts from all walks of life to explore ideas, opportunities, and strategies that we can all use to hack our way to better lives within patriarchal societies. If you're ready to hack patriarchal systems and structures, I invite you to join us and help move the needle. Today I'm sitting down with Jessica Milanes, or Jess, as everyone likes to call her. Jess is the owner of Smart Podcast Solutions and the creator of a proprietary system to launch your podcast in a day. She's helped successfully launch over 20 podcasts and supports podcast productions that rank in the top 0.5% globally. Her dedication to quality work, efficient workflows, and finding joy in each day keeps her going. She lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and finds her joy most days in her daughter. Welcome, Jess. I'm excited to have you joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, we are going to be talking about the podcast. So I'll give a little bit of a backstory about the podcast and then also how we ended up here for the listeners so they can get a hot take on everything. Starting back in January of 2024, I launched this podcast, not knowing anything about podcasting, not having a plan. I did everything you say not to do. Then I met you in March, and you are the podcasting guru. We haven't really talked about this podcast, my podcast, but in December, I knew that I was going to move into doing it weekly this year, and I still don't have very clear plans. I know there's a market, I know people are tuning in, but I do want to monetize it at some point so that I can take some of the lift off of my plate. I don't really have a strategy. I launched this year without seasons or plans, so the episodes are kind of all over the place, not something I wanted to do, completely unorganized. So in December, I asked you if I could get an hour of your time to come up with a strategy, and then I thought, let's actually do it on the podcast so people can see what you offer and how you work, but also a back viewing of this hot mess.
Well, I'm sure it's not a hot mess. I'm sure, knowing you, that it is designed intentionally, but there could be just another layer of intention and strategy on top of it.
Awesome. Well, I'm not sure how you normally like to get started. I'm open to telling you anything I didn't already just spew at you.
All right. So I know Hacking the Patriarchy, the podcast. I want to know, what's your why behind this? Why did you start this?
Yeah, I started because I was having a lot of conversations about access to capital for women and things they could do to more easily get the yes from investors. And every time I talked about it, people would tell me, oh my gosh, I wish I had that for the rest of my life, all the different things that are going on. And I kept hearing it. So I knew there was a need, and that was it. I launched it. I can say it now as of today, but with the current administration, I think it's needed now more than ever.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So your ideal listener is really a woman, female founder, or perhaps non-binary who is looking to secure financing. Is it for their CPG? Is it for their start, like a SaaS? Is it for services? Tell me a little bit more, like narrow that down even further for me.
Yeah, it's not, I'm going to go broader instead of going more narrow.
Rude.
It is not about funding. It is hacks to everything. We talk about career, we talk about interviews, we talk about launching a business, funding a business, taking a business global. We talk about it all. But it really is the hacks that would make a diverse individual. This year it's still going to be hacking the patriarchy, but it's flowing much more into just the general diverse individuals that don't have the same privileges. The audience is anyone in that bucket, and going really broad, it's anything that you can hack to make your life easier in all the different ways.
Got it. Okay. That helps clear it up, because even before I was thinking, is this a podcast about financing strategy? But I know some of the guests that you've had on, and I was like, I couldn't tie them together. So now I understand the overall purpose. So let's talk about what your goals are. What does it look like in the next 6 months if all of your goals are met?
Oh man, if all, I would, I
Within the
would have,
podcast.
I would have sponsors and be able to offload some of the admin.
Mhm.
Going back and giving you a little more insight, I'm pretty lucky. And to the listeners, jumping in like I did is probably not advised. It's probably ill advised.
Very.
I have a degree in film and television broadcast journalism.
Wow.
So I took courses that taught me audio and film editing. Yes, on different, we're using Avid and Final Cut Pro and all of these other things, but I still have that background.
Yeah.
My husband also is proficient in all of that because he has a ton of hobbies and interests that fall into that bucket. So I had a fail safe. I jumped in. I kind of learned audio editing. I mean, I had seen this stuff before, but I do everything. People ask about my team. It's me. I do all of it. So ideally, I'd get to a place where it was sponsored, it was funded, so that I could offload that. That is where I would love to be in 6 months. I understand that's probably a year-long plan.
And do you see this as a funnel? Because I know that you have a business where you do strategy and business strategy. Do you see this as a funnel into that, or is this just a separate passion project?
It's a whole separate passion
I
project.
love you for that. You and I are both, in fact, we have a business idea that we haven't done anything on that we created at all last March, and
Yeah.
we both have just been too busy. But anyway, okay. So let's talk numbers. What are your current download numbers?
It's not very great, full disclosure. I think I did 2 seasons. The first was 7 episodes. I don't even know what the second one is, all last year. And I have about 1,000 total.
Okay. So, gosh, I can't do math. 1,000 over 14, that's about 75 per episode-ish.
Actually, because there's more episodes in season 2, it is in that like 65 range, actually.
Okay. So
With some doing way better than others, of course. Like there are ones that have a ton and then ones that are much lower.
tell me about the ones that are doing really well.
The guests also marketed the shit out of it, made a big deal about it, blasted it to their community too, and stayed on top of doing so.
Okay. And this is a primarily guest podcast where you're bringing in experts, or are you doing solo?
Never solo. I've not had a single solo episode. The idea too is to uplift that speaker. Like the
Yeah.
graphics, they get their own graphics instead of having on the platforms the cover graphic fit all the things. Everyone gets their own. It is very much about the guest.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is this is an interview primary podcast. You want to get sponsorships within the next 6 months, and your download numbers are currently at about 65-ish average per episode. So let's talk about realistic goals and benchmarks here. So the first benchmark that you want to hit is 150 downloads per episode within the first 30 days of that episode being released. That actually puts you in the top 50% global of all podcasts. So that is your first benchmark that you want to hit. And I see from what you are telling me is the marketing with your guest has been really important. And then also, is there a common theme with those guests?
There wasn't. So last year was season 1 and season 2. Season 1 was career. So they all worked within career.
Okay.
Resume writers, executive coaches, interview coaches, negotiation experts. And then season 2 was all about business because that's my bread and butter. It was way easier. Just like you, I sit in front of this microphone almost once a week and I still get the jitters, but that was so much easier to have a conversation because it was my topic du jour.
All right. So I think there's really 2 forms of building your marketing muscle within a podcast. There is the organic based marketing and amplification efforts, which is also typically effort based. And then there is the paid strategy, right? So let's talk about that organic or effort based marketing strategy, because I think that that's the better place to start. And since you're already funneling time in and you're looking to get sponsors, we don't want to put money into something yet. That's down the line. So the first thing that I want you to think about is within the show description and within the episode titles themselves, do a little bit of organic search terminology. Hacking the Patriarchy is a fabulous title. And I want to know like some long tail keywords behind that. Hacking the Patriarchy, tips for keyword, 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 keyword.
Brilliant.
And that way people can be like, I am a career woman and I need tips, or I am an entrepreneur and I need tips, or whatever it is. Get those hot keywords actually within the title of your podcast. I also want you to put it on your cover art somewhere.
Okay.
Tips for yada, 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 yada. And you can keep updating that, tips for yada, 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 yada. And it doesn't have to update every single time on the show cover, but that podcast name is a search term minefield. Okay. And so really lean into that. The next place that you want to lean into when you're looking at search terms is your show description. Make sure that you have the long tail keywords and keywords themselves to pull people into your show. It's not as intense as the podcast name for searchability, but it is there. The next one is going to be the episode level. I want keywords in the episode title and I want keywords in the show summary. And this is where you are really going to want to sit down and figure out how you're formatting your show notes. In fact, I'm going to look on my phone right now.
Real time.
Real time. Hacking the Patriarchy. Oh, did you update your show?
No, why?
Cover? I don't know why, but I remember it being different. I remember it being more purple.
Most pretty pink.
It's pretty pink and it's cute and I love it. And I love how clear it is. You can actually see Hacking the Patriarchy podcast on there. Beautiful. Love it. That's fantastic. I was going to look at show notes. So I do like how you are writing show notes and that you have key takeaways. One of the things that I would consider is it is quite a lengthy show summary. Make it more skimmable. Make it shorter and bullet points.
No one has ever said that in all ways. So I love that. That actually makes it easier.
Yeah, of course it does. And like people just want to know who you're talking to, the key points, and then they're going to make the decision on whether or not they actually want to tune in. If you have a novel and they have to read through it, they're immediately going to bump right out. So a paragraph, key points. If you want to do timestamps, you can, but I don't find that they've actually been that helpful for my clients. So if it is no additional effort, go for it. Otherwise, take them out.
Yeah, it at the moment is no additional effort. And I contemplated that too, because at the time when I started using it, it was additional effort. But I am also going all in on video this year, which I did not. I have videos of each episode, but it was for marketing only. This time I'm putting a big push on YouTube, and they do like the time markers.
They do. And I mean, it's kind of nice from a YouTube standpoint if there's something very juicy that somebody just wants to click in and then they maybe absorb it. Okay, so that is the main things that I see just from an organic base using keywords and strategy. Now let's talk a little bit about the effort-based. Tell me about how you are marketing your show.
I literally just push it out, and then I post on social media. I post on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, and I do post, I think, a total of 5 times. So 2 previews, 1 live, and I think 2 follow-ups, I think.
Okay. Are you collecting emails and sending out emails when the show goes live?
I'm collecting them. I'm not doing that at the moment.
Okay. That's going to be your homework. In, I think it was 2023, maybe 2022. I don't remember exactly the date. Apple made a big change in how they handled podcasts. And so if you don't continue to listen to a podcast, even if you follow it, it doesn't automatically download. And so there might be people that just got out of the habit of listening to you, especially since you were a seasonal podcast. Send some emails every single time you release a podcast episode, build that muscle back in, and continue to collect email addresses. Another interesting thing to do with podcast guests who may be open to it, and I don't remember if this was on your link or not when I submitted to come on, is ask about if they'd be willing to do an Instagram live or a LinkedIn live. And then at the end of the episode, say, we're going to be doing an Instagram live or we're going to be doing a LinkedIn live. Sign up to receive the notification and then have like an email funnel for them to come in that way so that they then know, like, if that makes sense. So basically, like, you announce it on the podcast, the date is TBD, but it's probably going to be around the time that you release the episode after the release, and have an email go out with the official release time and date. And so that way, only those email subscribers are notified, and that just really pushes it even more to get people into your ecosystem. Other promotional, so you're posting on different socials, you're posting 5 different times. Did you hear that from me? Is that one of my things that I said? Okay. Because
That was just, that feels right.
so it's funny because it actually is not incorrect. The best rule of thumb, because we live in an algorithmic society these days, is 5 pieces of unique content within 72 hours of release. So I like that you're doing preview. You can do an email, and that can be part of your content. A live can be part of your content. A blog post can be part of your content, but all pointing back to the episode. When you are sharing with your guests or when you're posting, are you tagging your guests and making it really easy for them to amplify? Okay, fabulous. Love it. Do you like how I just stared off into space?
It's okay. You can take a break. You can go elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm like, what am I thinking? Okay. I want to circle back to the LinkedIn Live and the Instagram Live. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I could bake that in. That's easier. But I want to also throw, it's not a wrench, but I was going to move also to a community this year where it's a free community, but that paid subscriber gets XYZ. I know some guests that are coming on have products and services that listeners might want, and those will be for the paid subscribers. And I want to get to the point where I'm asking questions of the community and then asking them of the guests, and they get their answers. So there is that layer too.
Okay. And I think that could be, I'm trying to think of like how you could structure that. So could you maybe do something where you do these lives and the community gets the opportunity to submit the questions ahead of time and they get answered on the podcast? So there's a savable form of content. No, I'm sitting here thinking about that because I'm not sure. I need to think on that some more. I feel like I feel like there's something there that you could do, whether it is incorporated into the live, like you have to be part of the paid community in order to submit the questions, but the questions will be asked on a live.
I like that. You can also use the tech to do live and also record it. So
Exactly. And then it could be a private podcast within the community.
yeah.
So it memorializes the content. And like, so that could be an incentive then for people to be a paid subscriber within the community. They have to pay in order to keep and memorialize the lives.
Yeah.
We can talk about private yeah, there's something there. And we can talk about the private podcasting more offline, but I think that more communities really need a private podcast because it's such a great way for scalability on messaging and sharing information behind closed doors.
Yeah. I see a lot of marketers that don't even have normal running podcasts that have community podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great way. And like I think businesses are going in that direction too, because employees aren't going to read a 20-minute long newsletter or a 10-minute long newsletter because they have to be productive, but they might actually listen to a podcast to learn what's going on in the business. Okay, effort-based marketing. So keywords, you're doing everything right in terms of posting on social. I want you to start sending emails. I really do.
Okay.
I really do. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I would say socials or effort-based marketing wise. I don't think so. I think in that sense, you have a pretty good hand. And I will say, like, the fact that you are maintaining a 65 download per episode is not bad. It really is not bad. I want to give you props for that because running this stuff on your own is really hard. And building and growing an audience is exceptionally hard in today's day and age. So I think that is not a bad number. And I want you to pat yourself on the back for that.
I will say too, I have over almost 40 like regular followers.
So. Yeah, that's good. That's fantastic. And
I like a win.
It is. And I think that the other thing that we need to think about too is the intentionality of continuing to show up and download somebody's episode, because the tech systems have made it so that you really do have to choose to continue to listen. It's not going to be force fed to you anymore. It's not going to be spoon fed to you anymore. And so 40 people have made it their choice to follow you. And then over and above that, you have new people coming in through your guests. And they are choosing you. They are choosing your show. They are choosing your guest wisdom. So I think that is something to be celebrated and not something to feel shy or wary of. The other thing, no, because I was about to say the other thing that I could say is hacking the patriarchy. The title I love. Within the podcast apps, there is some SEO, right? And the first word is actually one of the most important words within the podcast realm. So I don't know how many people are searching hacking, but if you do career tips, business tips for keyword dash hacking the patriarchy, then I would be interested to see how many more hits you might get, organic hits.
Is that within the like high level or within
the podcast name? So where you have typed in hacking the patriarchy, I want you to put in like business tips for, or career tips for, or something like that. With the highest hit keyword at the very front.
Okay. I can't promise I will do that.
I know it feels very weird because you're building this brand called Hacking the Patriarchy. But at the bare minimum, you need to say like hacking the patriarchy tips for blah, 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 blah.
Okay, I can do that. I can do that for you. I
Yeah.
don't think I can change that.
I know the other one, I know it's one of those things where my mentor really recommends it. I don't know how impactful it is, but if you're willing to play with it just for, I don't know, a little bit, see what happens. But you don't have to. You don't have to. Okay. Do you want to talk about paid strategies?
I do, but I also I want to highlight what you bring and kind of look at those things that are normal success metrics. So obviously you said pat yourself on the back, but someone comes to you, they're like, I'm going to launch this podcast. What should the expectation be? Did I like fall super short? Am I right in the middle? I know that you get a fair amount of clients that come in and they like, you launch a podcast, you want the moon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that did not look good considering what just recently happened at the inauguration. So I didn't mean that, everyone. Right.
Want the moon. Oh God. I've actually gotten off of Instagram on my phone with the fires in California. It was just too heartbreaking and devastating for me. And it was like the final push that I needed. And I am off of Instagram on my phone. And so I didn't even see that until like late last night. And I went, oh my God. Oh my God. Here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Another 4 years. Got my bug out bag for Canada.
It's really sad reality for us.
It really is.
I can laugh about it, but I'm crying. Like,
Oh, I
I'm
mean,
not
we
on
have to
camera, I'm
laugh.
crying.
We have to laugh because we just have to. It's the full experience of human emotions that we're here again. Again. Expectations on downloads and when you first start. So a lot of it really depends on your audience, how warm your audience is, how aligned this is with your existing personal brand out in the world. There's a variety of different ways that one can utilize a podcast. One can use it for client acquisition through networking. One can use it as an amplification strategy for their knowledge and funnel into their business, or somebody can use it as a personal brand building and just like networking for networking's sake. And it sounds like you are kind of in that realm. And when I think of you, now granted, I know you after you started this podcast, but what I know of you is this really aligns with who you are at your core. And that's why it is what it is. So I would say numbers wise, it's hard for me to actually say when you launch, you should be here. These people that say, I will get you on the top 100 when you launch, I think are full of shit because there's really no official secret other than like bombarding you with downloads. And maybe they're paying for downloads, which is just sketchy AF. But download numbers. I have seen everything. I have one client, God love them. They just can't crest 10 downloads per episode. They just can't do it. We're trying a whole bunch of different things. Their views are off the charts on YouTube, but the audio downloads, they just aren't there. I don't know why, but it's something that we're trying to crack. And we've been working on their podcast for over a year now. Whereas I have another client who has a massive social following, and she was using their podcast as a way to funnel into her coaching accreditation school. And she relaunched and immediately went back to the top 0.5% globally. And that was, I think she got like 300 downloads per episode. So it's not like there's this huge mass that needs to go down. And the people that are telling you that they have 1 million downloads or 10 million downloads or whatever, they're looking at it over accumulation of time, and they're looking at it, they may have done multiple episodes per week. It's not something that, quite frankly, is attainable unless if you really, really, really put some time and energy and money into it.
Yeah. Full-time job with a budget.
Yeah. I mean, basically at that point, you are a creator and not a business person.
Gotcha. Let's move a little bit on that then
Yeah.
and look at that from, this was a passion project. I'm still doing
Mhm.
it because I believe deeply in it. It is, I feel good because it is gaining traction. It is slow traction, but you could see it on a graph
Mhm.
how it is moving. But you mentioned that that expectation is anywhere and in between. What is the best path if someone were to come to you and say, I want this podcast and this is what I want, instead of what can I really have? Is it that they're going to have to spend a ton of money? Is it moving target, luck?
It's a little bit of all things. I mean, there definitely is luck and timing associated with it, and leaning into amplification efforts, and whether that is effort based or organic, or effort based or paid. The path is really going hard, hard, hard on promotion and looking at your analytics consistently. What is moving the needle? What are people resonating with? Is there a certain topic? Is there a certain person? Is there a certain something? Is there a certain length to the episode that makes it better? I just did a deep dive last week on my newsletter talking about various podcast lengths, and I espouse many places that the podcast should not be more than 30 minutes. But then I actually did a deep dive on one of my clients who consistently has over an hour-long podcast, and he cut it down and his listenership dropped. So you need to be looking at your analytics at that granular level to understand what's actually hitting for your audience, and then double down on what's hitting. Don't overlook anything. Don't overlook length. Don't overlook keywords. Don't overlook graphics. Play with it all to figure out what is actually drawing people and keeping people, and start building on that. There was a document that our mutual friend Becca actually sent me, where she had, I think it was 48 pieces of content that you can create from one podcast episode. And
Okay, I obviously need to see that.
yeah, I'll send it to you, but it's really fascinating how to piece and put things together. And I think that that's the creator strategy of, okay, how many different lenses can I look at this and promote this to make it sound new and interesting every single time? And so it's doubling down on what's interesting and then repurposing it into something that's even more interesting. And that is how you are going to grow. Is it possible to still meet that $1 million download or million download? Yeah, it's just going to take time. It's not as fast as it used to be. I don't believe podcasting is oversaturated, but I do think it's even harder to find podcasts these days. So you need to really lean into that organic searchability.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk about paid and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. So paid strategies. There are a couple different ways to do this. There is the meta ad way. My friends over at Chime House Media have really led the charge on this. And actually, she's in Charlotte. Did I connect the two of you, Megan?
Don't think so.
Okay. I might need to connect to you because she's a fantastic human being. But they run a paid social strategy within Meta Ads and have this whole formulaic approach to teach you and really make an impact on driving traffic to an episode. And basically, the high level version of what they do is they take your highest performing episode and they literally just drive a traffic ad towards it. It's the Apple download link or the Spotify download link, and that's it. And the idea behind that is it gets more eyes and ears on your podcast that aren't discovering it in the organic ways. We all know that Meta is
The
deeply
devil.
the devil and like has so much data about us. It's unbelievable. So you can really get very targeted on who you are looking to talk to and who you want this podcast to get in front of the eyes. With you, I mean, I would look at who has the highest purchasing power within your ecosystem and your listener profile. Because if you can go that route, then you can go circling back to the sponsorships. You can then say, okay, well, sponsors, these are my average downloads. This is my demographic. I think we would be a great partnership together. Here are my rates. So that's one paid strategy. The other paid strategy is you can actually buy advertisements within podcast apps themselves. Spotify has a platform, an ad buying platform that is very expensive, and it is very hyper targeted to certain locations. So I typically don't recommend that. The other one is overcast.fm is another podcast app that if your podcast is on Apple, which it should be, then it automatically appears on overcast.fm. And there are a limited number of ad slots that you can purchase to have a banner ad at the top of the podcast player. So let's say somebody's really interested in health and fitness. That's like what your demographic really loves. You can actually buy podcast ads that appear anytime somebody's listening to a health and fitness podcast. I have not done a ton of Meta ads, so I can't speak to the cost of those, but I do believe that Overcast.fm is more affordable in the grand scheme of things. And typically you see a higher ROI for that. And it's something that like you can just go on and buy yourself. You don't need an ad manager. Typically, you want to go at the first of the month because that's when things are the cheapest and when things are the most open. Business category is stupid expensive. So figure out what some of the other interests or niches that your listener profile is in and buy into those.
Okay. Fascinating. I have ran Meta ads in the past, and not for the podcast,
Okay.
for other parts of my other businesses. And it is very cost effective. Where I would be interested in is actually beyond the conversion is if these listeners end up tuning into more than the one episode they're driven to, like what they do beyond that. I'd be really fascinated.
Yeah, and I Megan might have a way to track that. I don't know. But it really is very interesting to me too. We'll have to talk more about meta ads offline because it's something that I've always been curious about, but I just
like everything else I do, I learned how to do it and I did it. And
I'm sure you did.
It was it worked and it was cost effective. It didn't I drove them to sign up for a free course and they did. They didn't convert from there, and that's probably something in my fault, but it did work. And it was, I think I spent like $10 a day. It was but
But then
the return on investment really wasn't there because I spent how long learning the stupid thing. But now I know how to do it. There's that.
Oh, isn't that the story of our Manny Gen lives where we're like, we're going to fucking learn this and we're going to be so good at it. And then we're going to move on to our next thing.
I was going to mention that at the beginning of the podcast that like, this is not for everyone. That is just what I do. I really like to go, I have this idea. I know people might be interested in. Actually, I know people are interested. I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to learn the whole process. I'm going to do the whole thing. People are going to ask me about my team, and I don't have a team because I'm drinking from the fire hose.
I feel you entirely.
All right. Well, we've ran super long. And funny, I try to keep it in that 30 mark, and I've had anywhere from like 27. I've had people go on and not wrap it up to 45 minutes. I try to keep it in the 30-minute mark. I don't think I've ever hit 30 exactly, so.
Well, it's fine. It's fine. You don't have to hit 30 exactly. Maybe people will find this really interesting, and so they'll be tuned in for longer.
Well, I think anyone interested in podcasting is, if they find out that's what we talked about, should be interested.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I was honest about things here. You were honest about things here.
Yes. And this is a fabulous, this will be really good for me to market out too.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, for the people tuning in out there that might be that are going to be interested in connecting because they want to learn more about podcasting, they want to launch their podcast, they want to get a strategy, all the things. How do they reach out to you?
Yeah, so I am now most active on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I think I'm under Jessica Milanes rather than Jess.
I think you are too.
Yeah. Or you can go onto my website, www.smartpodcastsolutions.com. We have a podcast roadmap, or not roadmap, scorecard that is available for you to download. It's a great freebie for you to figure out, like, is a podcast the right thing for you? And what do you need to work on before you even start with a podcast? So go check that out and connect with me on LinkedIn. I want to talk to you. I love talking to people. I love connecting with people. And I love sharing my wisdom because I think that there are more voices out there that need to be heard. And it's my mission to amplify the voices and help leave a legacy that I'm proud of.
I love it. I will put all that in the show notes. I have my homework. I'm going to do some keyword and some SEO work, and I'm going to start sending a weekly email.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you again, Jess, for joining me today. It has been my absolute pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. I'm so happy we got to connect again today.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to today's episode. For all the juicy deets on this episode, be sure to check out our show notes or give us a holler on Instagram at Hacking the Patriarchy Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support this podcast, don't be shy. Please share it with your friends. Sharing is caring after all. Lastly, if you'd like to lend your personal support, please take a moment to tell the world about it with a review on your favorite streaming platform. We'd be forever grateful. Tune in again soon to enjoy a brand new episode of the Hacking the Patriarchy podcast. And until next time, keep on hacking, my friends.